Roll for Crit presents how to play My City in 5 minutes or less or more. My City is the tile-laying legacy game of building and expanding, designed by Reiner Knizia and published by Cosmos. My City is a legacy game, which means you're meant to play it as an extended campaign over a total of 24 consecutive games with the same group of players each time. The game is divided into 8 chapters, with each chapter containing rules and components for 3 games referred to as episodes. Each chapter will introduce new rules and concepts, as well as new stickers to modify your game board and pieces. Your ultimate goal is to finish the campaign with more of these progress symbols at the top of your board filled in than any other player. The primary method of filling in these symbols is by winning individual episodes by gaining the most victory points. In this video, I'll be explaining how to play your very first game of My City, beginning with Chapter 1, then covering some additional details for the game's Eternal mode, which is separate from the Legacy campaign. The basic rules established in Chapter 1 will pretty much be in play no matter which mode you're playing. Each player begins the game with their own personal city board, a collection of building tiles in 3 different colors, and a score marker which begins at the number 10 spot on the score track. There will be a deck of construction cards, and each round the top card is flipped face up. All players find their building tile of the matching shape and color and place it somewhere on their board. Players should try to place their buildings at the same time and not wait around to see what other players are doing first. Buildings need to align to the grid spaces outlined on your board and can only be built on top of light green spaces, not the mountains or forest spaces of your board. Some light green spaces have rocks or trees in them. Rocks are not mountains and trees don't count as forest spaces. You can build on top of these because they're in spaces with a light green background. In fact, you'll want to build on top of rocks because you'll lose points for every rock showing at the end of the game. On the other hand, you'll gain points for every tree showing, so while you can build on top of trees, you should try to avoid it. The very first building you place in the game must be built so that at least one side of it is adjacent to the river in the center of the board. Just touching a corner doesn't count. It needs to have full edge-to-edge contact to be considered adjacent. You cannot cross the river with one building. It has to be on one side or the other. Once your first building is down, all other buildings need to be placed with at least one side adjacent to an existing building. It doesn't have to be the most recent building you placed, just any building that's been played before. Even if the river is between them, buildings still count as adjacent as long as they're bordering each other in this way. Just don't overlap the river or other buildings. Once all players have put their tiles down somewhere, the next card is revealed and the process repeats itself. If you don't want to place a tile, or you're unable to because you don't have room for it, you can pass for the round. Passing costs 1 point though, so if you're doing this, you'll need to move your score marker back a space. If your score marker is at 0, then you can't pass. If this happens and you still can't or don't want to place a tile, you can instead end your participation in the episode completely. You won't lose any points for this, but you won't be able to place any more tiles or take part in the remainder of the episode. Once the deck runs out, the game is over. Players receive 1 point for each individual tree showing on the board, lose a point for each individual rock, and they lose a point for each empty light green space still showing. The more spaces you cover up, the better you'll do. But mountains and forest spaces won't count against you. Whoever has the highest point total wins and gets to color in 2 progress symbols at the top of their board. Second place gets to fill in 1 symbol. Depending on the episode, there may be additional scoring rewards, such as stickers that can be applied to your board. In a 2-player game, the player in second place receives the other reward listed instead of the second place reward. After a chapter is complete, you can open a new envelope and continue playing. New rules will be introduced over time, but this is all you need to know for your first game. You can stop watching and go play! If you're interested in playing the Eternal game, which uses some aspects from later chapters, then continue. The Eternal game uses the reverse side of the player board, and for the most part, the rules are the same as previously described, with a few additions. Now you'll receive a bonus for connecting buildings of the same color. At the end of the game, find your largest contiguous group of buildings in each color and receive points equal to the number of buildings in that group. You also have 3 church tiles. Churches cannot be passed on. You have to build all 3 of them, and if you can't, you must end participation in the game. For each church that's bordered by buildings of all 3 colors, you'll get 3 points at the end of the game. The well is another new space, which rewards you with 4 points during scoring if you manage to get 4 different buildings adjacent to it, 1 on each side. Or you can sacrifice those points and just build over it if you need to. There are also 2 veins of gold on this board. The first player to build on top of both gold veins declares it immediately and receives 3 points right away. Finally, there's a new blocking card in the construction deck. When this is revealed, reveal the next building card as well. That building won't be placed during this game, and all players can discard it without penalty, then continue. The rest of the game plays the same way until the deck runs out and scores are totaled, including trees, rocks, empty spaces, and everything else I just went over. In conclusion, draw, build, connect, score! That's my city in a nutshell. Did you get all that?